we'll go through them and see if we can come to consensus on May minutes.
Okay, this is from May 9th.
What? Teresa can't get in. Hold on.
Wasn't your meeting just on Teams? Or was it Zoom?
Yeah, no. She keeps going into the old meeting, wrong meeting. And now Lamar's having trouble logging in. Resend them both the link.
Well,
And simultaneously scroll the minutes, Louis. Please. Thank you. Or maybe I could just call her in. How about that?
you can pull on Teresa. You don't know if you probably can't pull on Lamar.
Yeah, let me see if she can come in that way. Did I get her? Nope. Oh, somebody just came in. Oh, Lamar. Okay.
I emailed him.
All right, perfect.
That's it.
Okay. Do we have consensus on approval of the minutes?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Louis, can you send me the approved minutes in a attachment?
You already have them, Gus. Danielle sent them on Friday.
Oh, okay.
No changes were made.
As
Yep.
attachments, right? Yeah.
Yep.
Great.
Okay, so just a couple of updates in terms of the minutes. So this month, Lewis is going to be sending to our SLT principals as well as chairpersons documentation for them to fill out a survey as to attesting to taking our 2-hour training. Either they actually were on our training or they watched it in addition to their SLT. So we'll have that documentation. He's also going to send a reminder for those who have not already done so to go through the activity that we've created around our biennial survey, to just have them to start talking about their SLT health. And we're also going to ask them to go through that in September, October again, because it really does help set guidelines and allows them to put systems in place as to what should happen in terms of monthly meetings and what they should be talking about. You know, the one thing that I'm really proud of this year, and Dr. D'Antona can attest to this, is that when we went to our schools for PPOs, now more than ever, and I really do think it was from the way we've organized our schools through the pandemic digitally, our SLTs really have very strong structures that are allowing them to speak directly to their CEP, their goals and objectives, to benchmark properly. So I'm really proud of that work, and I know that it is because of the way we run our DLT. So I want to thank everybody just in terms of the ways that we work together to help support our schools. I know a lot of times it sounds like we have, you know, just these long meetings and we spend a lot of time talking about, you know, I say, to Mike all the time, like this bird's eye view, and we're making decisions from a bird's eye view, but our work has really influenced our schools, and I'm just really proud to see our schools using their CEP as they should be used, which is the tool that guides their decision making. SLTs really understanding the work that they need to do, and it really does come from the work that we do. And Gus, I know you can always add to that. I see you nodding.
Yeah, that's why you're an excellent district. And I'm hoping that when the state accountability gets together, they will put you in good standing as you richly deserve.
Thank you. Me too. And I do want to thank Principal Ignazio for coming, Accardi for coming. I think he did a great presentation. I think he is a tremendous leader, and I think he is going to get Flushing where it needs to be. So we're really proud of the work, and that he does take the time to come and report to us around what's happening at Flushing. And as always, we'll continue to support them in our vision of choice for our families, but also having really good local high schools for children to attend. And so thank you, Bill, for organizing for him to come to do that. Okay. The next piece that I want to present to you guys is that we are going to be going through a transition in July. So I wanted to put out there to get consensus of foregoing our July DLT meeting and then doing our August DLT meeting at the end of August, if that is okay with the team, because that way we will have our systems and structures fully in place. What we are being told is that a lot of the transitions that are going to happen at the district and central offices are not going to happen until the end of July. So not necessarily for superintendent offices, but for all the other offices, you know, just in terms of hiring and placement within districts. So I don't want us to, you know, kind of meet and not be able to really talk about the transition. So if everyone is okay with that, I did send proposed dates to you guys in the email. And I did want to spend some time actually just going over the August and September date. So do we have consensus first in foregoing the July meeting. Is there anyone who's opposed to that? Okay. And then let me just hop into my email to pull up those dates really quick. Okay, so August 31st, which is a Wednesday. Normally we meet on Mondays, but that would be a Wednesday because the first day back is 30th, August 29th. So I didn't want all of our school-based people that are part of our team to have to hop on for a 2-hour meeting. So is August 31st on Wednesday okay with everyone? Yep. Okay. So the rest of the dates are in adherence to our bylaws unless there was, you know, a break whereas I went the following week. So if there are, and we don't have to do this right now, I think our August 31st date is the most important one. But if there are any dates that are concerning to anybody, we can highlight them, you know, when we meet in August. Okay. So that's that.
I will ask someone to cover for me, Danielle.
Oh, you won't be back on the 31st?
Nope, I'll still be in Venice.
All right, so so I would like to propose, and I hope everyone can come to consensus that we will meet in Venice. Since Gus will. But Gus, one of the questions that I did put out there is I'm sure DLTs are part of open meetings law. I'm not sure. No? Oh, Shirley, you asked that question?
Yeah, I don't believe they are,
No,
but
yeah,
you know,
they're
whether they're going to be hybrid or not, you know, I'm waiting for clarification. You know, from Central on.
Okay. Shirley, have you heard anything about the recommendations for DLTs?
not. To continue as is until further notice. Because
Right.
I know that the education councils are doing training. So they had training on hybrid meetings. And I think going forward, hybrid meetings for the public to join, not necessarily the council members to join virtually. They've been having, right, Joseph? We have, okay.
Yep.
So yeah, but DLTs are not subject to open meeting laws like PAPTAs aren't either. Only in our world, only the school leadership team and the education councils are subject to open meeting law.
Okay, so I guess to be continued, just in terms of where and how we will meet, you know, that I will be in touch with you as I hear over time.
But they are encouraging hybrid, you know, because of the parents.
Okay. Yeah,
Mhm.
no, I agree. I agree.
This question, Danielle, I'm a little confused. There's a possibility we may be meeting in person on August 31st or not?
Nope.
Yeah, I don't know. We're waiting to hear from Central around how we're going to organize our DLT meetings.
Okay.
So, okay. Next, I want to say thank you for all of you who participated in the superintendent's town hall hiring in the C37. Hopefully, we're coming to the end of that process, and we should be hearing an announcement soon around superintendents. But I know that many of you on the DLT took part in that process, and I want to say thank you for doing that for the district and for really speaking on behalf of your constituencies to make sure that the needs of schools and teachers and families are heard. So I think that was really important to the chancellor. And although it was a very stressful process for me, I have also learned a lot through that. And I want to thank everyone who did participate. Okay. Next, I am going to turn the meeting over to Dr. D'Antona. There's a couple of things that he's going to go over with you. We did give out our end of year assessments. So he has done an organization of that data, and we started framing draft goals for the 2022-23 school year. These are very drafty goals. We're trying to put something together so we can present to the principals within the next couple of days. But we just really did a whole breakdown of our data. So we are looking for some feedback around what worked, what didn't work. are the way our goals framed really saying what we want our schools and our communities to understand what we are focused on and what they need to align to? Are they connected to what the chancellor's goals and initiatives are? So, Mike, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Yeah, great, Danielle. I put in the chat the Google Slides for today, as well as a feedback Padlet. So when we get to the goals, I do ask that if there are things that strike you, things that you feel like, you know what, I'm not really sure what that means, or this needs clarification, or I don't think that's the right direction. Just, it's a space for us to use as a means of reflection and adjustment for our goals for next year. So let me share my screen and we'll talk a little bit about what our outcomes look like, at least as it relates to the iReady assessment. We will see whether or not that translates into how our kids performed on the New York State assessments. Last year, with the limited number of kids that did test, it did show a correlation. We'll see what happens when we receive our assessment data back. Likely, I can't even put a time frame on it because it does vary, but usually it's at the end of July, beginning of August, we wind up receiving it. Sometimes it's later. The latest we ever saw it was in October. I don't think that will happen this year, but nonetheless, we have more clarity will come when we see the overall performance from the state perspective. So our goals, just to quickly refresh, our goals were, across, and these, as you remember, we adjusted in January because of the change in DCEP format that came out in late November. So our first one, focusing on early childhood literacy. What was that? Did you hear that? Oh, okay. Focusing on early childhood literacy, the goal was to improve by 5% in terms of the percentage of our kids that were performing on or above grade level. We were using the Acadians Diagnostic Assessment Tool in order to do that. I'll show you a little bit about where we are. Specific emphasis on our Hispanic and Black populations. Ensuring our students are college and career ready. This was around our math goal. Again, our two targeted subgroups, our Hispanic and Black population, goal with everyone increasing by 5%, but specific emphasis on our two subgroups there. Investing in special education, goal was that we were going to increase by 5% in terms of proficiency levels in both ELA, both reading and math. Our multilingual goal, this one was a new one that was established in January. The goal was around reduction in the percentage of children that needed instruction in relationship to the social emotional learning data that came back from the DESA. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Excuse me. The CRSE goal around our kids engaging in social action types of projects. I'll share with you a little bit about where we went with that. And then we'll finish up with our Apple work that we have done this school year. I'll just share a little bit briefly around some of the tasks that were created. We did have a really great end year share fair, which we'll briefly talk about as well. So our early literacy data. So this one, I still need to get more information. The data from Acadians comes to me in a little bit of a different way. So the assessment window closed on Friday. But what I was able to do in the short term was to pull at least what the subgroups were doing. I need to break it down in terms of the individual components of the assessment still. But the data does indicate that we would have met our goal in terms of increasing by that 5%. Our Hispanic population grew by a little over 5.5%, and our Black population by just under 6% in terms of overall performance. But having said that, and you will see in the goals later, there's still a ton of work that we need to do in this area. Obviously, we know that 39% and 45% are not nearly good enough at this point. But in terms of the goal that we set this year, in terms of Acadians, we will have met that goal. In terms of our ensuring our kids for college and career readiness in terms of mathematics, You'll see here are three subgroups on the top. From left to right, you'll see children that were 3 or more grade levels. To the right-hand side is those that were mid and above. And then you'll see the difference from BOY to EOY. And that's the overall percentage change for our kids from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. So we did see nearly a 28.5% change from where our kids were at the beginning of the school year to the end in terms of all students. For our Hispanic population, over 23%, and for our Black population, 19% change from where they were at the beginning of the year to where we are now. Now, I will say, in this 1 grade level below band, we do have a significant number of children that are just below what we would be deemed a student that is on grade level. So we do have, quite a bit of movement that still, obviously, that we can make inside of here, in addition, obviously, to the children that are 3 or more grade levels below. But inside of this 1 grade level below range, we have a lot of kids that do have the potential to move forward, even on this year's state test. So we might see these numbers be a bit more elevated than what you currently see here. But we would have met both of the goals. The data that you see here is a little bit below what we performed at in 2019 by about 5% in both of our subgroups, including our all students. It's about 4% difference from where we were in the 2018-19 last assessment that we took. I included this one in here. I just felt it was important to share that the children that received MTSS at some point during the year, and how they've grown. So children that were in our MTSS work, we did see a 20% change in proficiency, which I think is really important and a good space to celebrate, because it gives us that momentum in terms of, let's talk about what within our MTSS supports really worked well, and what do we need to adjust. And you'll see a little bit of that conversation that we're going to have in terms of the goals that we've, again, preliminarily started to organize, because we have seen a positive change because of the work that our building leaders have engaged their schools in relationship to MTSS. So, positive data coming from that perspective. Students, our special education students, we did see nearly an 11% change from beginning of the year to end of year in terms of our reading performance, bringing us to around 21%. Again, in the middle of the year, I used projected outcomes. This, I just used the overall total at the end in terms of where they performed. There is a likelihood that some of our kids that are 1 grade level below will wind up testing proficient on the state test. We will see what that looks like when the time comes. And we saw an 18% change in performance in terms of students, our students with disabilities performing on the math side of the iReady assessment. So we did see significant progress. Obviously, there's still a ton more work that needs to be done within this subgroup of students as well. If we look at this comparatively speaking to the state exam in 2018-19 was the last one that we had all kids take, we would be right on the same percentage level in reading and about 2% below where we were in mathematics. DESA outcomes. So in January, February, we talked about the percentage of kids that were identified as in need of instruction in relationship to DESA. Our schools were asked to identify children, particularly our Ls, that were in need of additional instruction, and were asked to provide those additional supports to improve outcomes for our kids in this area. So the goal was to reduce the percentage of students that were in need of instruction to 16%. The end year DESA assessment shows that number is below 10%, at 9.41% of children that still, based on the end year DESA assessment, still need additional social emotional learning supports at this time. But the number was reduced to below 500 children, 500 English language learner children. So we did make some progress here. still a lot more work to do in this area as well. So the Apple Share Fair, I'll briefly just give you guys an indicator of what this looked like. So in late May, we engaged our schools in a share fair. This was actually a really exciting set of presentations that our schools had completed. So our schools were charged with engaging in this authentic learning experience for our kids, where they had to talk through what were the content standards that were being addressed, and then really what was it that we were asking our kids to do, really making them the doers in the learning, and creating opportunities where it wasn't just about writing an opinion piece, but it was about really connecting with a larger community, and that sometimes that community was just within their school. Other times it was, a more significant group than that our kids were really connecting with. One example that I had a chance to go and see personally, we had something called the Buddy Bench, as I mentioned to you guys previously, but we had the unveiling of the Buddy Bench, and the kids were outside for the unveiling. They were super excited about what they were able to create. And all of that involved so much learning inside of the process. There was math connections, there was literacy connections. They went on and around their classrooms to teach their peers about the importance of the Buddy Bench and being kind. And they held data on it. And when they saw the data wasn't showing what they were hoping, they went back into the classrooms to reteach to their peers to make sure that they understood why the Buddy Bench was important and the things that they can do as learners to help them. And they had a really big sense of accomplishment, and that's the goal of this work with Apple. And this was a really quite a productive end to the school year for this work. Similarly, for Civics for All, our schools developed soapbox speeches. They just held the Queens North soapbox. We had 6 of our schools were identified to share their soapbox speech. We have PS 21, 163, 165, 209, 189, 194. And then one school was identified to serve as the spotlight speech for the entire event, and that was for PS IS 499. So what's exciting about this is that our kids are really getting into this space of understanding that their voice is really powerful and important. So we do have plans of continuing this work. This is just a very brief video. One of the schools took this. Oh, this is loud. Took this and they created a Civics for All share fair where kids got to present their social action activity across across their building. Were they able to ask questions, share a little bit about what their social action project was about. Can you hear it? Oh. Well, that stinks. I must not have clicked to share it with the audio. Of course. Why would I do that? Hold on. At least you'll get the tail end of the audio. How many times am I going to do that? Okay, you'll get the tail end of it just so you can get it. So, this work this year was our pilot year across our schools, and we've received a bunch of really great feedback from our building leaders. We do have a survey that's actually going out to all of our teacher participants to gather some feedback from them to support improvement in this area moving into September of next year. But I can tell you that, visiting schools and seeing the kids that were participating in the Civics for All work and having them have an opportunity to take a stand, this was really quite productive. More, because this was our first year, we obviously have building blocks to support it into next school year. So we're excited about the trajectory of this work too. So does anyone, before I move forward, does anyone have any questions about the data that I just went over before we move on? Okay, we're good. Okay, so proposed goals for 22-23. Again, these are very drafty. But one of the things that Superintendent Domingo and I were talking about that we mentioned to you guys during the last DLT was around a focus on literacy and tier 1 instructional supports. So we've embedded that in our goals. We do want to continue to maintain the idea of addressing the organizational pedagogical conditions that are leading to our gaps. But we want to do that through professional learning with a specific focus on targeted tier 1 instructional practices within the 5 pillars of reading, so that we're really cueing in to the areas of need, whether it's phonemic awareness, whether it's phonics, whether it's vocabulary or comprehension. We want to make sure that we're connecting with our kids in the most appropriate way. And as we're unpacking the data, what we have noticed, especially in for our kids in 3rd grade, that there were still some gaps in phonics, which by 3rd grade, our kids should be in a space where phonics is not continuing to be something that holds them back as readers. So it is something that we did notice at the end year data that is kind of driving home this conversation around tier 1 and what that means for us. But within the pillars of reading, what is it that we're seeing as the gap that's influencing our children from not being proficient readers? So that is kind of where we are with the early childhood literacy. Would love to hear what you guys think. As building leaders, teachers, parents, in relationship to building our kids as, building our students as readers. So any feedback that you have would be certainly most welcome. Okay, and guys, as we go through, any of them that you want to pause on or feel like you have questions about, I did not put in a percentage here. I'm always lukewarm about percentages because I feel like we need to think about whether or not 3 or 5% is really what we want to say. But anyway, this is the crux of what we were thinking. In mathematics, and this one, Superintendent Domingo and I were just chatting about whether or not we want to land just in number sense and operations. So this one is certainly up for discussion and change for sure. But one of the things that I did notice, across grade levels, was that number sense and operations, particularly for our kids that are below grade level. This is a strand that is really super important for them to be able to move forward and be proficient proficient mathematicians. So similarly, we're maintaining this focus around tier 1 instructional supports. What are we doing inside of our classrooms that's going to ensure that we're not getting to the space of everything having to be tier 2 or tier 3, but that much of those supports are happening inside of our classrooms on a day-to-day and period by period instruction?
I got a question.
Yeah, go ahead, Shirley.
Is there a set format on how to ensure that the number sense and operation strand will be conducted throughout all the schools, or it's going to be left by school to school on how to improve those understanding?
Yeah, you're on mute, Daniel.
So that's a good question, Shirley, because
Great question.
And I think it's the problem that I have with making our goals so specific, but realistically, our assessments show that this is a strand that we need to work on, which would mean that our schools would get professional learning in them. We would ask them to highlight where they live within their units of study. How do teachers know where kids are performing within those units of study. So if we are going to do something this specific, it means that every school would have to focus on it. Because, it was the same thing with us last year with vocabulary, where many of our schools, their data showed the need to focus on vocabulary, and a lot of our schools did that. What Mike and I are talking about, just in terms of thinking through our goals, is that one of the weaknesses of last year was specific and strategic professional learning for our schools in the area of vocabulary. So if we go this granular, then the district professional learning would be in those areas.
Yeah, and this is just one variable. This is kind of like the initial thinking, and just the feedback alone around, does this now mean continuity of approach across schools, is a really great piece of feedback to consider. Because math has so many elements to it, that even within number sense and operations, there is a huge range of, well, where within number sense and operations are our children falling short in terms of building their math fluency and computational fluency when they're going through it. So there are a lot of things even within one domain that can be unpacked. So it's just kind of like that initial thought of where we would go with this. We have to still do a lot more digging into this end year data to see exactly whether or not that's the most appropriate. It does show itself though, as a problem area for sure. Okay.
But you know what else happens in terms of this is that, one of the things that Mike was talking about is, if kids don't know and they don't get an idea of number sense and operations when they're younger, it affects their performance in math when they're older. One of the other pieces is, many teachers don't go back and make those corrections because it's just understood that you have to have those concepts as you move up in grades in terms of math. So that's the other piece that we wanted to include, those tier 1 strategies and MTSS around. So if you see students, and the crazy thing is that if you get a kid in 6th grade that can't read, there are some targeted things that you do to support that child. But teachers don't take the same approach in math when kids are not doing well in certain strands. You know what I'm saying? So we're actually trying to shift their thinking around that, like knowing your students well enough to say, I have to provide supports in this area, in this one particular strand for these particular kids. And just know that when we set that as a goal, that it's not this broad goal that will be reaching all kids, because some kids will know number sense and operations, right?
Yeah,
So,
and listen, I see it in my
own
own children. Both of them, have their struggles in math, and a lot of it stems from, having an understanding of what is happening with numbers. What are the relationships between the things that they're seeing, and oftentimes where they wind up, getting tripped up is that they don't see the relationship between what they had done previously and what they're now doing with the math in the next series of learning. So it's an important part of mathematics for sure. Whether or not that becomes the landing place, we still have to have additional conversation. Would love to again hear anything that you guys have in terms of thinking moving forward for sure. But that's a starting place nonetheless. For our special education group, it's still remaining in this theme of making sure that the instruction that's happening in classrooms is really targeted and supportive of the needs of our kids in class. This one has a layer in of not only the tier 1 instructional supports, but whatever those MTSS learning cycles are going to be for any of the gaps in learning that our students with disabilities may have, to really build on some of the skills that are currently not proficient in. So this would be both in reading and math. Again, these are preliminary, a lot more to dig into for both of these subgroups. We did not, one of the promising things is that we did not fall too far off of what have been our traditional patterns of performance. But even having said that, there's still a lot of
Yeah.
work that we have to do for our students with disabilities.
So I want to kind of frame a little bit about what is happening within this goal. So we spend a lot of time training and talking with our teams around LRE. So, and we have meetings for Central around LRE, and I believe that students should be in the least restricted environment. We've talked as a DLT around the disproportionate number of students who are Black and Hispanic, who are English language learners that are referred to special ed and they're put in small classes. So, so we have talked about the bias in that work and how we want students to be placed in their least restrictive environment. The problem is when we do that, the teachers don't necessarily have the supports in place or the professional learning to engage in targeted access supports for students that are in there. So that's really the foundations and the thinking behind this goal, is talking to teachers about. So you're teaching your content and you have these students who are struggling. What's the first thing that they do if they don't refer them to special ed? They refer them to MTSS, right? MTSS referrals has become the new special education referral. So what we're really talking about is before you refer outside for outside support, here are tier 1 instructional practices that you can engage in your class as you're delivering content to support these learners. And I think that's important. I think a lot of times the state and the city sort of throw out these ideas like MTSS, but all those other underlying things that we're trying to target are still there. So then we have certain students that just land in, so now you're not getting referred to special ed, but you're spending all of your time out of classrooms in tier 2 and 3 MTSS, right? So we want to find ways to minimize that and train our teachers in how to do that within the classroom setting.
Our L's, we've talked about our work with Marianne Cucciara in the past, but really investing in the 3Ls approach. Again, this one that is one that Danielle and I were going, back and forth on, so, we still need to dig deeper into this particular goal as to whether or not this is the right landing place. So overall, our English language learners in terms of reading, we're at 16.5% on or above grade level, which would have been an increase from the 18-19 school year. And interestingly enough, you say, well, Mike, that is really, 16.5% is very low, and I would agree with you. But in context to the rest of the city, we are very high performing in that regard. So the interesting part about our English language learners, when they test out, they outperform our general education population significantly. They're over 70% performing at 3 or 4 when we look at old 18-19 state data. So our L's that test out perform really, really well, and there are thousands of them. The kids that are currently in that range tend to be children that are within their first few years of service, or they are what we now deem as long-term Ls. So we have this space of how do we accelerate the learning experiences for our kids that are in that space of not being able to get over the hump. So, one of those approaches that we've used in the past is the work of Marianne with the 3 Ls. It's language, learning, language, and literacy to really bolster the proficiency levels of our kids, particularly our Ls. You're on mute, Danielle.
I do want to say one of the things that I spoke to Mike about is that I want to see what our test scores look like in terms of 3L's work. A lot of our schools have done it this year. I don't know once again, this is really getting granular and training our teachers to engage in these 3L's approach, which it's strong work. It's really heavy in grade level, rich and engaging text for students, strong vocabulary work, very strong in grammatical elements at higher levels that we don't normally teach. But once again, I think Mike and I have to really kind of continue to unpack this. but we want your opinion around our thinking, in terms of, are there other ways to approach supporting English language learners? Should we look into other ways to approach them? And get kind of your opinion on it.
I have a question.
Yep.
The ELLs, is it constantly like changing? In other words, every period, aren't there like more people coming in? So how do you really account for that?
So that's I think where we landed with our 3Ls approach, because that work is good for all kids, just in terms of literacy. But it is a way to approach any language learner, second language learner. So whether you're moving towards testing out or you're brand new, it's about ways to unpack language.
Yeah. So Joe, it's an ever moving target.
Yep.
So when children test out, new children come back in. So it's a constantly moving piece that we have to work towards. So we may
Because that
test
would
out.
always bring the numbers down.
And
we may
it will
test out
always
another kid,
be low, right.
another child's going to come in that is brand new that has to take the state assessment.
Right.
So
and it'll
that
always
is, yeah.
Yeah, and it'll always be low, because once our kids test out, they're not counted as L's. So it's like this ever change. It's always at that low space of kids being tested that don't know the language.
Yeah, and I think the significance of it is, especially for kids that are coming into us 5th, 6th, 7th grade, absent that language support, they become more likely to be those high schoolers that wind up dropping out. And that's what we also want to be able to curtail is, that we're building their language proficiency to a space where they can be ready for high school. So that they don't become one of those children, which at one point it was about 25% of L's in general were, in line to potentially be dropouts. And that is a huge number, when you think about it across the city. So, this is kind of the initial thinking with this. But again, welcome any kind of thoughts or feedback from you guys in terms of where you believe we should go next with this particular subgroup of children. Okay. So this one, we don't have a result on yet, but would love to get some feedback from you guys on this as well. CRSE is something that Superintendent Domingo is really, is really big on, and looking to continue to build across our schools. We've done a lot of training this year for our building leaders and cohorts of teachers. But having said that, we still have a significant number of staff that have not been trained, in this area. So, the initial thinking was that we want to make sure that all of our schools have engaged in CRSE training. We have had a consultant that's working with us, whether or not that training continues with her or with someone else, or within the context of the district. We'll see how all of that irons out in the next couple of months. But to make sure that every teacher in the district has received training in this area, so they're making good choices for kids. And that to me is really what CRSE is all about, is really getting to know our kids super well, that we're making those practices, that making those decisions that help our children really get engaged and motivated in learning in our classrooms. So, what our initial thinking was is that we want to make sure that all of our schools are trained in these practices. But with what kind of a result right now, it's just % of district staff participating. That's just kind of a filler at this point. We can decide collectively around what do we believe that end result should be from this training. Would love to hear your feedback on what you think that could be or should be. And then lastly, because we saw so much success, and guys, all of this, by the way, is based on whether or not this central keeps the goals the same way. They may, they may shift the goals. If you remember in January, they shifted to this we shifted in January. They brought out the new template in late November to include the qualities of what then Chancellor Porter was looking for inside of the goals. I don't know if Chancellor Banks is going to shift these as well. He may. So what we have here might have to shift anyway. But having
That
said
being
that,
right, it's still our thoughts in how we're thinking to
Yeah.
move the work that we're doing as a district forward.
Yeah, and with this last one, the developing students as digital citizens, we did see a great deal of progress and great work with the Apple partnership that we've developed, and I see a very, very nice link into the Civics for All work, because it's about kids taking action, kids being able to be the front and center of their learning to do something. So we were thinking just about making those two things connected. That the authentic learning experiences for kids are also about them taking some type of action, within the context of their school, whatever that action may be, for their school community or a larger community if they, as a student body and school staff, see fit. But with the goal that all schools are designing and implementing units of study that culminate in transfer and social action tasks, where we're thinking about them in a collective mindset rather than these separate entities, because they don't need to be. They don't need to be. I'm doing an Apple task here and I'm doing a Civics for All task here. They're really very connected in that respect. So we thought that we can kind of integrate them both together, and push the work forward, because I do think that's where we want our kids to be. We want them to be the active learners, to be the ones that are doing the work and having a result, a tangible result, to say, I did that as a student. I think it's really super important. So that kind of brings us to the end of the goals. If Danielle, do we want to give just a few minutes to reflect on the Padlet and put any?
Yeah. Yep.
So the Padlet is in the chat. I will put it in there again. This is basically what it looks like. We have a focus on early. Oh, some of you already added in. Thank you. We have each of the 6 goals present here. If you can just kind of in the drop down, any of your thoughts, any of your thinking, would love to get as many of you to comment on it now. We'll give the next 7 minutes for everyone just to kind of put any notes. If we need more time, we'll extend it after that time. But
and something I want you to think about is, just because we're saying that this is the direction that we're thinking, doesn't mean that you could put something in here that's completely different. For example, now I'm thinking through the lens of a parent. If I were a parent looking at District 25's goals for the first time, I might ask the question of, well, what is digital citizenship for our district? And are there other ways that we can support that, right? So, I mean, and these are the kind of conversations that Mike and I have when, we're framing the goals. And as I'm looking at this from that lens, as he's presenting, I'm like, well, do we even have an understanding of what digital citizenship is? I mean, do we need to do more work with that? Is this something we need to speak to Bill about? Maybe around how that's tackled in the high school. What is digital citizenship, and can we support that? What is how we're approaching CRSE, where members of the DLT want to see that, right? Are we properly investing in special education? So just take a few minutes to kind of throw your thinking in there. This is really about, not Mike and I making the goals, just really about hearing from the DLT and things that we would want to see. And Bill and high school representatives, kind of feel free to look at that from your lens and say, well, we're here, and I don't know necessarily starting where your thinking is going to get them high school ready. So just kind of put those things out there.
Yeah, I know there's a bunch of people that are in. Does anyone else are some of you in process of typing in a comment? Yeah, we have some of them that are in process of typing, Danielle. Yeah, guys,
All right.
we'll keep
Yeah.
this Padlet is open. So and it's one we're gonna allow others to pop into and share their thoughts too. So at any point that you want to pop back in here, something comes to you, you're hearing something or you're thinking something, this will be available for you so that we can come back to it before the start of the school year and make any adjustments that that need to be made as well.
Yep. And I'm seeing a lot of things here just in terms of, so if we're looking at numbers and numeration, but it's also around project-based learning, right? We don't just want drill to happen with kids. So thank you for that, and keep putting your comments in, just around things that we can think about. Okay. So next, the final thing is that I said to you, and you can put this in the chat, send it to me in a separate email because we're not really going to plan them until August. But I wanted feedback from the DLT on community town hall topics. Our chronic absenteeism town hall was very well received, and it's something that I do want to continue doing, hosting town halls for our communities around certain topics that are meaningful to District 25. So anyone that has ideas, like I said, just pop them in the chat or send them to me separately, and Mike and I will start to work on them. All right, so now I'm going to turn the meeting over to Gus. Thank you, Gus, as always.
Okay, thank you. Louis, should I try sharing or are you going to get my PowerPoint up?
You want I can upload the slides for you.
Okay. Basically, the DCP situation is as follows. We have the current template. The Central DOE leadership and my office at Central has not determined whether changes are needed or not. What they've done is they've decided that they would like to obtain feedback from DLTs citywide. And so there you've been sent two things, the template, which you're familiar with because it's the same one that you used. There are only some minor changes, which I'll go over in a moment. And then there's a feedback form. On Friday, I spoke to Mike and Danielle about how they would like to handle the collection of feedback from the DLT. You could do it individually on the form, or because you're a very technology savvy district, you might have another method for getting collective feedback. So I'll defer to them on that technical side. The other piece is that the um, Central wants input from DLTs on best practices, and they've come up with a form to collect that information as well. And I've provided that form to the DLT and the district. Similarly, I leave it up to you as the best way to collect the information. Whatever information I receive from all of Queens, I will forward to Central as the Queens contribution to both of those pieces. Um, the other items that you have, and I know I have a lot of handouts this time, is we normally give out the suggested activities for DLTs in September, but it was decided to give them out now to help with planning for next year. So there have been some adjustments made, and uh, but you're familiar with them. The document again has been shared with you in terms of suggested activities in terms of DLTs going forward for next academic year. Louis, move on to the next slide.
Sorry, Gus. You can.
Yeah.
You can do the slides.
Oh, I can. Okay.
Yep.
How do I do that? Just by clicking on them?
There should be a button that says "Take Control"
Let's see.
at the top.
At the top. Reactions, apps. Can't you just
Well,
move
for
it?
me, it's
I
now
can.
for
Sure.
me. It says take control under the slides.
Oh,
right?
underneath the slides. I don't. Yeah, I don't
Oh,
know.
well,
me,
now I
yeah,
see
it's-
it. Okay, yeah, I see it now. It's underneath. Okay,
Yep.
so the other item that we've shared with you is A655, which I know most of you are familiar with, that governs all DLT and SLT uh, uh, actions, DLT requirements and responsibilities. I know that this is currently being discussed and is under review. Uh, Shirley is on the central committee, and I understand that they're working on it, but we don't have anything new yet. But there's
Wait, Gus,
nothing.
can I just interrupt? Shirley, they've canceled a lot of our last meetings, right? We haven't been,
yeah.
yeah, it's been a long time since March,
It has?
maybe
Okay.
April.
We didn't have any meetings for the month of May because of these C-37s, these
Right,
town
right.
halls and stuff. That's what I'm assuming why we haven't had any meetings.
Yeah, so I think
And they
we're
had
kind of at
canceled
a
before.
stall.
Yeah,
And they
well,
Yeah.
started
hopefully it'll be
again,
picked
yeah.
up next academic year at some point. And we're in a period of changes, which is why the DCP is still in flux, and many things remain to be seen, and will get clarified as the new academic year goes forward. So here's the suggested activities calendar, which you have, and the collection of best practices document. And I will, after I stop talking, I will leave it to the district to decide how they want to suggest that input be provided on those. The revised CP template is, as I said, very little revision. They've updated the overview based on the chancellor's priorities. BCO information obviously has been taken out because BCOs will no longer exist after the end of the month. And there are some slight revisions to sections related to the continuous improvement planning. And then, like I said, we're waiting for input on these two items. Danielle and Mike, how would you like to handle the input on best practices and DCP template?
We'll send something out, you can meet with me and Louis and Mike later, and we'll just put a list of questions. We could send a survey.
Okay, well, it's the form is pretty simple, and not everybody has to provide feedback, and not every question needs to be answered. But whatever works best for the DLT is, what you always do. So those are the DLT issues. I know that you just went over your goals, your preliminary goals. I expect to be around until the very end of August, and then come back in September. So going forward, we will, I'm sure, get a definitive DCP format to work with. Whether it's this one, whether they tweak it, remains to be seen. And then I will share that with you as soon as I get it, and we can begin working on it. Either you could begin looking at it in the late August meeting, or in September, and beyond that. So that is, any questions on the DCP or the activities or best practices? And I know you have lots of best practices which I've shared already with Central. So you should use that form. I encourage you to use that form to include some of your best practices that can be shared with Central and be noticed citywide. Danielle, I think you're talking, but you're muted again.
Are they recommending a full retreat? Like, that's so
Nope.
funny.
No, they're not recommending anything specific. They're just recommending input at this point, and we'll see, how this all plays out going forward. I will move now to CEPs, and I've given you the CEP timeline, which Lewis can share as well. The deadline is the 17th, so we're close to the deadline. I know that your schools are actively working on their CEPs, their preliminary drafts of CEPs. I've been getting questions from schools, and there are always the usual I-plan issues. As I always say, I'm available 24/7 to any school that needs assistance, or if you want to do something with groups of schools, it's just a scheduling issue as far as I'm concerned. We will support schools on CEP development. And of course, I always work closely with the district staff on all CEP matters. So the 17th is the deadline. They've already started issuing those reports and lists, completion reports from Central. I fully expect that District 25 will be one of the first districts to complete all their CEP drafts and get them in, as you always do. July 8th is the attestation. And I know there are lots of concerns in terms of budgets, and schools have gotten their budgets and they're trying to work things out. That's why they made the date July 8th, which is a little later than usual, to give schools time to work on those budget issues. And the principals are supposed to push that attestation button and attest to the alignment between budget and goals, draft goals, by July 8th. And again, I expect all of our schools to be able to do that. I sent out to the district office a PowerPoint that I got from Central that uh, um, gives instructions on how to do it in case there are some new principles or people are confused and need a refresher. I'm sure that you shared that with all of the schools. In addition, there is, in the previous meeting, I shared CP resources and links, which are also on iPlan, on the public side of iPlan, under resources, and they've updated the webinar for goals. Actually, on Friday, I heard from Will Manicus at Central that he just completed updating the goals webinar that is available for schools on on that aspect. If you need a separate link to that, what I'll do is I'll get it and share it with you if you think it'll be useful for schools. Otherwise, they can just find it. So there are lots of resources around for CP development. And then as the timeline, the usual timeline that we know is superintendents are to certify the budget and CP goals alignment by July 29th. I'm again confident that my superintendent will be the first or among the first of all superintendents to do that certification. And they'll be issuing these lists of missing schools and so on. But the District 25 will quickly be on the completed list, I'm sure. And then July and August, we the district team and myself on an as needed basis will provide feedback on individual CEPs as usual in iPlan. And we'll use those bubbles and principals in schools will take that feedback into account. And then come September, they will use that feedback to revise. And right now we have a date of finalized CPs October 28th. And we'll see how that timeline works out going forward, because as I keep repeating, we're in a transitional phase where change is a fact of life, and we'll see whether they adjust that. And I expect to be with you for support throughout this process, and will keep you informed on any changes, and constantly be available to schools to help out with anything that's needed. If I'm away or my schedule changes, I will make certain that arrangements are made for CP and all kinds of other support to District 25. That's basically all I have to say. iPlan appears to be working well. Schools can download and print out and save their drafts. That's been something new that came to pass last week or the week before. I always recommend that schools, as they're working on things, save their work, because technology, ladies and gentlemen, being what it is, have learned experience with it. Things sometimes disappear. There are all kinds of technical issues that come up. So if it's important to you, try to have it backed up in some way. That's what I tell schools all the time. And if training needs to be put together for any purpose over the summer or in early fall, we can discuss that. And I will get whatever resources are needed to support you. If questions come up, going forward, as always, from any DLT member, please forward them to the superintendent's office. They will forward them to me, and I will get the best answer I can from Central if I don't have one already. Mike, the data that you presented this morning, is that what we have so far on the standardized test data?
That's Gus. That's from iReady. Standardized.
Yeah, that's
that's from iReady. That's not from the state.
Okay, so the standardized test data is coming out, and schools. I get this issue from principals all the time. How can I draft my goals? I don't have all my data yet, et cetera, et cetera. My answer is the standard answer that I've been giving. It's a living document. You are going to revise, you are going to refine, as the information
Yeah,
becomes available.
but
Yeah,
Yeah,
they
but good
now have
snapshot.
their iReady
they have their eye ready,
snapshots
and the
and they're
patterns,
yeah,
are there.
yeah,
So
what
yeah,
they will look for when the state data comes
right.
out if there's any discrepancies
If
between the
any
two.
discrepancies and
Yeah.
so on. And as we go forward, they will get more and more information at the high school level. The regents have not even been completed yet, so that tends to lag. That'll be a little later. I'm in constant touch with the superintendent's office at the high school level and my wonderful colleague and support Bill Doyle and his colleagues, and we will address the issues of data and goals on the high school level together going forward. Any
Yep.
question? I constantly, by the way, bring up the issue of accountability and state accountability and how the state intends to handle that. We meet with Sharon Renscher, who is the liaison to the state for the system every week. And every week I ask that question, and every week we keep getting the same answer that they're discussing it and that there will be clarification going forward. Um, as Bill Doyle knows, and that Western High School Principal Accardi knows, I have asked Flushing to put together its data and a sort of a little overview of why they deserve to be taken off the list. And he's going to provide me with that. And I assure you, I'm going to forward it to Sharon Renscher and ask her to, put it right in front of the state's face and advocate for that school being taken off the list, as the other school in Queens North as well.
Yep.
Hopefully, they will do that. They will not identify anybody else, and my goal is to have all of my Queens districts in good standing and
Perfect.
taken off the list. That's my goal.
Perfect. All right. Thanks, Gus. So I'm going to turn the meeting over to Bill now. For
And I
the
want to thank
Heights.
everybody for their support throughout this academic year. Bill,
Yep.
take it away.
Thanks, Gus. Thanks.
Let me just share for a second here. Does everyone see the screen?
Yep.
Great. All right. So for the high schools, this is a very busy time of the year. The first thing I wanted to talk about is at RFK High School. We've had multiple college trips this year. This was our last one to Mercy College. As you can see, we had a bunch of students go, some faculty members as well. They had a wonderful time. They're always learning, right? They're learning about what it's like to be a college student, what it means to go to college, and the different opportunities that are being offered. Second thing, again, this is RFK High School. At the end of the year, we usually hold our SGO elections, student government. Students really stepped it up this year. We had lots of participants, and here's some photos. We basically had the students have a full-on campaign where they have to write speeches. They do public service announcements, and we had all the kids go down into the cafetorium, and in the cafetorium they were able to deliver their speeches to their colleagues, and they were able to vote. So it's democracy in action. So that's so just trying to give you guys an understanding of a high school perspective. And then the last thing, right? More celebrations at RFK. We had our senior prom at Leonard's in Great Neck. And I got to see my good colleague, Dr. Ignacio Accardi, because he was having it at the same time. So it was great to see him and be there at the same time. And as you can see, our kids really dressed to the nines. Everyone had a great time. Everyone got home safe. It was a great celebration. For other schools within the D25, we're going to talk about John Bound High School. So similar to RFK, lots of things happening, very busy time of the year. She says that Dr. Ionelli says the energy is contagious here. On Friday, June 3rd, they had the agricultural science major celebrated with Future Farmers of America banquet and the award ceremony where students were recognized for their achievements. And the new slate of FFA officers were announced. On Monday, June 6th, students were inducted into the next Arista inductees. So they had 76 students inducted. On June 7th, they had their Air Force Junior ROTC celebrated with an award ceremony and an introduction to the new commander. On June 8th, they celebrated their seniors with senior award ceremony. We're doing ours tomorrow. And on Thursday, June 9th, they hosted their annual Major Olympics. The event was planned by the student union. Students came to school on their day off to compete against other majors in competitions such as tower building, art redesign, three-legged race, and more. So this was obviously a fun activity for the students and for the staff. On Friday, June 10th, they held their annual carnival for students, and they all had wonderful celebrations. I wish I had some pictures to show you, but as you can imagine, just everyone's so busy. And now we're going to go into more of the P Weekly information for high schools. So, from teaching and learning perspective, there was a mandated dyslexia awareness training that Mayor Adams and Chancellor Banks wanted all teachers in grades K through 12 required to complete this. For principals is optional, but this is really excellent training so that teachers can identify this and to build into strategies to help students to understand how to combat that and how to improve their reading. For school climate and safety, June, as you know, is Pride Month, a time to appreciate and celebrate the contributions and achievements of LGBTQ community. In the past years, joined the DOE in the system-wide commitment to affirm and elevate LGBT voices. There's also many LGBT events in schools. So there's a link there that you can click on to see all the different activities um, to celebrate. Again, moving back into academic policy, this is also a time of the year that we have lots of regents exams, and because of different policies, there are many, many opportunities for students to graduate and different ways for them to graduate at the high school level. So in the May 17th edition of P Digest, students who meet the following eligibility criteria may use the special appeal to earn a diploma with a low score on a regents exam. And these were students that took the Regents exams from June 2022 to August 2023. And the student scored a 50 to a 64 on a Regents exam for that particular subject. They could appeal. The student could appeal that. The student earned credit in the course of study under that appeal. So there's lots of different rules and regulations that go along with these appeals. So really, schools have to kind of prioritize student by student as they go through this process. And now you're going to see more of this with the appeals. So there's a special appeal to earn diploma with a low region score on exams taken from June 22 to August 23. Again, it's going to be similar to what I posted before, but this is a request for a special regents appeal. Moving down to the next piece on the academic policy, um, we're talking about the U.S. history and government regents exam. So for this particular regents exam, all the students will receive waivers that qualified. So schools have to then do their due diligence and go into ATS and plug in the right code so that the students have a score of a WA, which is a waiver for that particular exam. And then lastly, I know Gus was talking about schools completing their CEPs. Uh, we don't really at the high school level have Regents data. We haven't had it for a long time, but there's many other data venues that we use, such as internal data from screeners. And this is one of the screener datas that we can use. This is the SEL screener, the social emotional screener that was open until June 9th. And I know that tomorrow we have a principals meeting, and we're actually going to go over our DESA screeners as a cohort of principals. So that should be really helpful. And we should probably include that as we're writing our CEPs. And that rounds out the high school report. Turn it back over to you guys.
Thank you, Bill.
You're very welcome.
Okay, any questions for Bill? If not, I want to turn it over to Shirley. Shirley, you have high school president's council report? Or I know you had sent an email about PACs to talk to us about
Okay,
it.
so everybody had gotten hopefully the citywide subcommittee notes. I'm just going to talk about what happened for Queens High School's President's Council, and then I'll go back to the email that I sent to some of the DLT members today. So first, on May 24th, we had our tri-borough event with Bronx and Brooklyn. We had Chancellor Dr. Lester Young from the Board of Regents to talk about June Regents. By now, obviously, we all know that the American History Regents was canceled, was not administered on June 1st. And any I'm just highlighting the main things. Any student who score with the grades of, I shouldn't say grade, the score of 50 to 64 can apply to something, to a waiver for those regions not to count if they score between the score between 50 and 64. That event was titled "High School is the Anchor of Your Child's Academic Career." And we had a conversation along with the chancellor, who says this, which is appropriate, especially when you have so many questions about regents, graduation, why parents should stay involved all the way through graduation, high school graduation, in their students' academic career. On June 4th, we had our first part of our series, Elevating the High School Voice. Part one is our student, is high school voices being heard? The chancellor was there. All the high school superintendents were there except for one, or a representative. They were the panelists. We asked a series, well, we asked a series of questions on the topics of health and safety, life skills, civic and career readiness, overcrowding, and new high school seats. We only was able to go through round one. The panelists gave really great detailed information on the answers. So we'll continue, we'll do another one on those topics, because we actually had 4 rounds of questions on each of the topics. And I say we were the main moderators, but we had the students come up with questions, and we had UFT there as well. So we were those three stakeholders were voicing their stance or their opinions in regards to those topics. And then I was asking questions from our prospective stakeholders' voices. We're going to continue the conversation in the fall, aiming for October and November. The only, and hopefully all the panelists, because School Construction Authority wasn't able to join us, and the chancellor really want to have that conversation with them when it comes to new seats and relieving overcrowding with School Construction Authority there. We have our meeting tonight, the last one for the school year. And what else am I missing? The C37 processes are going for high school superintendency for this too, for Queens South, Queens North. Queens South already had one. There's 4 citywide. The custodium, Allen Chang School, they had this.
Consortium,
That was,
yeah.
custodium was June 1st. The same night as Queens South, we did New Visions. So we still have 2 more to go, and Queens North, which is going to be completed this week, the 14th and the 16th. And tonight is transfer schools. The 14th is Queens North, and then Thursday is help me out, CUNY and Urban Assemblies, Fresh Walls, the current Fresh Wall schools. So
you have to do all of those?
We're supposed to be on all the high school superintendency. Technically, we're supposed to be on all the district ones too, but we can't do all those. because usually they don't do C-37s for a high school superintendency. This is actually, again, a first time because there was never a C-37 for high school superintendency. So that's our first time. The town halls were the first time having town halls regarding that as well. I wish everybody the best of luck. For those who, they should have a result they state by the end of June. Those positions should be announced. What else? Okay, so this is an email, and this is more for Queens High School. Well, Title I is for everyone, right? They're complaining that their school, John Brown High School, doesn't have a PAC, and that they're having a difficult time working with the principals, the PAs, and the parents are having a very difficult time working with the John Brown principal and getting things done and regarding Title I and meetings and getting information about the budget. I said I will bring. I still bring a.
You what?
I'm sorry. So I'm bringing it here so the Queens North High School Superintendency understand.
Yeah, so we can, we do have a pack. Anne-Marie, you're here today. Yes, thank you. And Anne-Marie's worked really well with Esther to kind of put everything together. We also have Gus here. So so Shirley, if the parents have specific areas that they would like support in from the DLT, just let me know. I mean, did John Brown, you said, does have a pack or they do not?
They don't have a pack because I asked, in the email, I asked them, are you,
Okay.
Joining the pack because they have so many issues. And one of the issues is the fact that if they can't spend the money by June 30th, they lose it. So I gave an explanation, but I told them what should have been happening going forward, what should happen. They have supposed to have their Title I annual meeting,
Yep.
Where they explain all the Title I funds, especially the ones set aside for the parents, but how the schools plan to spend the 99% and all that. These conversations also supposed to be on the SLT. It should be aligned to the CEP. That was all in the email, but they're
Right.
saying that in my response. And then they were asking about the June region schedule. And I didn't respond, but I respond about that too. I just copied and pasted what was on the schedule from the website. But I just went into their website, meaning John Brown, this morning. The first thing that pops up, I don't know how long it's been there. It could have been in response to this email, but first thing that pops up is the region schedule, right? So
Right.
so you could tell them that Bill. That's what's happening now. I don't know if it was always like that, but she's saying that the school is not communicating to all the parents, and these conversations aren't happening on the school leadership team, and they're having a very difficult time with the principal.
Well, I'm sure
So,
Superintendent
yeah,
Gibson's, office
yeah,
will,
but there's two, right,
yeah,
but Gus, there's two
yeah.
things. So, that the one piece around communication in that is superintendent's office. But if there's any questions about PAC, Shirley, you can refer those parents to Anne-Marie Knable, who's on, DLT. And she can work with Esther to support simultaneously while the superintendent works with the principal, because there's two things, right? So the parents who have questions about, how to organize a pack and how to spend that money and permit that submit the proposal, with consultation with families. If there's confusion about that, we're happy to assist in that, in that piece.
Right.
Additionally, Shirley and Bill, you can connect with the superintendent's office, but all of the trainings, they're now recorded. So if the SLT has any questions, they can always look at that and present that to their SLT in the same way that any of us do this at a DLT, right? So if we have the knowledge and understanding, you could sit in an SLT and basically say, these are some of the things that we want to see. Now, one of the things that we talk about is budgets, right? And I know that budgets, we just had this conversation at another meeting prior to this meeting where budgets are a little concerning in District 25 right now, because there has been significant register loss, but there's also the loss of ARPA money. But by all means, we have communicated from my office that budgets are not secrets to this SLT, and it's actually a principal's responsibility to talk to their SLT about their budgets when framing their goals. That is not an argument. I'm not going to argue it anymore. I've been arguing it since I've been a superintendent,
Right.
and I'm done arguing it. And so, Teresa's here. She knows that I've communicated it. Bill, if you could just check in with your superintendency office. I can't rule it, I can't support a principal that doesn't share their budget with their SLT. That's not, one of the things that we talk about a lot is that we want to support empowerment. But empowerment doesn't mean that you get to do whatever you want. Empowerment means that you have the tools to lead a building and to lead your community. So like any principal, and Teresa knows we said this, any principal that's not willing to share their budget, I'll share it. I don't, that's not the point. You're not, you don't own your budget. It's not your bank account. It's money that, we need to use to form our goals. And especially now when we have to make some cuts and talk about some changes in our programs across our schools, absolutely that, and yes, Teresa, that's my next part. Absolutely, that is something that needs to be done with your SLT, right? If you're losing coaches, if you're changing any kind of professional learning that's happening, if we're losing any programs, all of those things need to be discussed with the SLT. It's part of how we frame our CEPs, and then Teresa also put up. Oh, go ahead, Shirley.
I'm sorry. Yeah. They're pleading to the chancellor. If you don't know that, was to the chancellor because they claim that all avenues, they're not being heard. To have a meeting for all meetings. So I would like to suggest if we can have a meeting, Bill and Danielle, and with the parent leaders and the principal. They want a meeting set up. Their emails are saying this is a cry for help because nobody's listening. This is the first time I'm hearing from it about what's going on at John Brown, and they have Superintendent Gibson on there. I added everybody else, I think, because I don't want it to escalate. It shouldn't have to escalate to the chancellor, especially. This is the first time I'm actually hearing from it. So
yeah,
like all those slides, all those presentations, all the information, I had attached it to the email to them. But they really want to have a meeting, a conversation, I guess a conversation with the principal, with other people present.
Yeah, that's
to discuss the issue.
That's not necessarily done with me. We're happy to kind of come in and support everyone in terms of SLT training, and kind of everyone understanding what the process is as a team. But I don't necessarily do the meetings like that at the high school level. So Bill, you'll, and I'll also do that as well. But I definitely, Lenine, want you to know that there's outlets and resources through the DLT that certain parent constituencies can reach out to. And one of them is Anne Marie, just in terms of PAC support.
And
So
Bill,
I just have a
if there's
question.
a fiscal issue, you should involve Dragomira because she is the Title I support.
Got it. I just have a question for Shirley. When did you first hear about this? Because like if I had heard or if we had known earlier, I would have tried to address it, or, obviously the superintendent would have tried to address it. So this is like brand new, or is this a week ago or 2 weeks ago? Like when did this occur?
Honestly, last night.
Oh, okay.
Last night when I look at the email, and it seemed like the email was written Sunday night.
Okay.
So I saw it, but I put the response to go out this morning. I don't want to think everybody don't think I don't have a life, but I saw the email. I saw the email on Sunday night around 10 something. And I was like, what? And so and when I look, it seemed like they wrote the email on Sunday. So like I said, this is the first I'm hearing for it, literally just a few hours ago.
And I just want to remind everyone, this is also related to your 100.11 plan for CEP support. If the DLT and the superintendent's office needs, they're the first areas of support. If you're not able to address the issue and you need assistance, then let me know and I will get Andrea Ferguson from Central involved, and ask her to target support, as she often does citywide.
Yeah. Yep. And sometimes it really is just a matter of support and training for the team. We know, and we say this a lot, that, when SLTs are unsure of the process, a lot of times they go directly to budget, right? And where Teresa put in the chat, budget is no longer a secret. There is a public view. So I think if we're all in agreement that Shirley, you'll refer the pack to Anne Marie, and then Bill will look into organizing that with the principal. And if they need support of the DLT, they could reach back out to you, Shirley, or the principal can ask, and we're happy to support.
Yeah,
Is that
and
okay?
you've done it in the past. I remember
Yeah.
that you've helped other high schools in District 25 in the past who had issues.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually the work that we did at Townsend Harris is what led me to kind of promote this piece of asking schools and SLTs, do you want to be part of the beginning framing of goals, or is it okay for, principals or school level people to just write the goals and we all look at it? Because, Townsend Harris was very clear they wanted to be part of the goal setting process from the start. So yeah, I mean, we are happy to help should they need.
And Bill, I'll wait to hear from you on any follow-up.
Will do. I'm going to be meeting with Superintendent Gibson later this afternoon, so I'll definitely bring this up. Absolutely.
Okay, perfect. But I also do know one of the things that I asked Dragomira at the CEC meeting was when the budgets will be public, because currently the new budgets are not public. So I could see where a principal may be going back and forth. But either way, if we're talking about framing the goals, we need to, at some way, present our new budgets, especially if there's going to be some deficits happening and that we're going to have to make some major changes to the programs. So
Danielle, the current Title I budget is public.
it's public now?
Yeah. Well,
Right,
the
so
current,
still...
the not next academic year, the allocation, which I guess has not been spent. That's what I'm hearing from the discussion
Right.
on the set aside. That is already in the SAM 11.
Yep.
So one could look at that, and Dragomira can run a report along with the budget lead for the school and see what funds have not been spent. And then, the deadline is upon us. So they need to move quickly on that.
And at this point, Shirley, it's probably very limited. If they haven't spent it or allocated it, or earmarked it, they're probably very limited in what they can spend it on right now.
Right. But they should not leave money lying on the table.
Yeah. Agreed.
Mm-hmm. They shouldn't, but they only could spend it on the way the state says they could spend it.
Right.
That's the problem. And I don't.
Yeah.
And I wasn't sure. I didn't hear that they made a decision on being rollovered. It was considered. Did they make a decision if these funds can be rolled over again, like the past 2 years, or not?
Well, that's a Dragomira issue.
Yeah.
She will know whether what the rollover possibilities are.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So if necessary, then Bill's team can reach out and kind of get those things in order. But overall, if the team needs support, we're happy to help the team just in putting systems and structures in place, getting them trained, and making sure that they're moving in the right direction. So for September, they can start this work right away. Okay, great. Francis, I know we have President's Council tonight. Do you have any updates?
I don't have any updates. We have just one speaker tonight, and then we're going to postpone the elections to, I believe, the 21st to give the district a chance to finish their elections.
Yep, thank you. And I know that Francis has been working with Esther to make sure that we have all of our PTAs and PACs, and I want to thank you both for helping one of our schools that was really struggling for a long time, and now they have a PTA and a PAC. So thank you guys.
You're welcome.
Okay, Joe, CEC, any updates?
So we had our last meeting for the year on June 1st. Congratulations to all the CEC award recipients. We had over 100 students and staff recognized for their outstanding leadership in the community. We announced the Big Apple winners and our very own Joe Kessler Award recipient who's here today, Teresa Mishar.
Teresa.
Congratulations to you as well. We have our first calendar meeting for the next term on Wednesday, July 6th, where we will be discussing the changes to the open meetings law and hopefully come to some type of agreement on how we're going to conduct our meetings. And that's it.
Okay, thank you. Any of our union partners, Teresa or Lamar, any announcements?
Hi, it's Teresa. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Hi. We just want to say that we're very excited about all the graduations coming up, and it's just been a really exciting time. We're just so happy to be semi back to normal and enjoying some of these fun activities, although most of them outside with the kids. So it's just been a great month of June so far.
Yep. Teresa's done a lot of really cool things, so always feel free to drive past 185 and see what she's got going on. The other day she had Ralph's Ices out there, so just always feel free to participate in the many things that are happening at 185. I also want to announce that we had a teacher, Anastasia DeFino, who won the Flag Award for Teaching Excellence. She is a 5th grade teacher from PS 120. So she was awarded $25,000 for herself, and then the school received $10,000. So Dr. D'Antona and I went there the other day to celebrate with her and her family and her students, and it was a really nice day. Okay. Any new business?
I have a question, Danielle. Do
Sure.
you know when the Bell Academy construction is going to be complete?
I do believe they are on target for 2024.
And do you know, I know that currently now they have, I believe, 3 6th grade. Is that going to change once they make that, that construction?
Yes. So once they're coming closer to the end of their construction, what my office will do is we meet with enrollment. We look at trends around 169 and Bell Academy, and then they will open up more seats for the entire district, because remember, Bell Academy is an application school, so anybody can apply. So we are thinking, and Joe, correct me if I'm wrong, they're getting about 150, 160
Just Bell
seats.
Academy,
Yep.
right? Because
Yep.
it's like 300 seats for both schools.
Yep. So they're getting 150, 160 additional seats.
So we know what the numbers are in additional seats, but we don't know how that's going to affect the incoming students. But that's
Right.
going to be the project for next year, because already, admissions has been decided for September. So we're looking at the following September, right?
Yeah, well,
I was just wondering, because one of the things that make it so unique is that it's a small school, and now if it's getting bigger, I'm just wondering if it's going to have more 6th grade, more, you know what I mean? It's not going to be as small as before.
it will definitely grow, but I think it will still be a small school. It will maintain that uniqueness in it. Because out of the seats that they're creating, remember 169 is getting additional seats too. It's not only going to Bell. So I think Bell now has about 400. So it would still be, a smaller school. Many of our larger middle schools have over 1,000 kids in them. So we're not projecting Bell Academy to get anywhere near that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right. If there is no other comments, I will say thank you to our DLT, and I'm looking forward to continuing the amazing work that we do. If I get any business pertaining to DLT, I will email you before our next meeting at the end of August. But if not, I wish you guys a wonderful, restful, peaceful summer. And as always, you know that my office is here if you need anything from us at all. Okay.
Have a great one, everyone.
All right. Thank you,
Stay safe
everyone.
and
Have
well,
a great
everybody.
day. Take care.
Have a great summer, guys.
Always a pleasure.
Have a great summer, everyone.
Enjoy.
Bye, everybody.